They say Rome burned for its sins. I ruled the empire, but I never ruled myself.
They say Rome fell to fire and time, but I know better. Rome fell to whispers, and I was one of them. I speak to you from beyond the centuries, not as marble, not as memory, but as a shadow cast by the torchlight of your curiosity. My name was once spoken in palaces, traced upon the lips of emperors, burned into scrolls and erased from them again. I was the breath behind power, the silent tremor that made men believe they ruled. Now, I am only the echo. Once, they called me the Empress of Pleasures, a title born from desire and from fear. I did not seek it. I only learned how to survive in a world that devoured its own beauty. Rome was not gold and glory, as your books pretend. It was a beast, magnificent and starving. Every banquet was a battle. Every glance, a blade. And in that glittering cage, I became both the songbird and the serpent. I remember the first night I understood what power meant. The marble hall of the Palatine glowed with torchlight, men drunk on wine and ambition. My husband, the emperor, laughed like a god above them all, his crown heavy with laurel and lies. He thought himself immortal, the chosen of Jupiter. But I had already seen the cracks in his divinity. He loved Rome, but Rome loved me. They pretended otherwise, of course. The poets hid my name beneath metaphors, the priests cursed me beneath their breath. But every senator who kissed my hand trembled. They feared that I could read the truth written behind their polished smiles, that I saw the boy within the man, the hunger beneath the oath. I learned early that beauty was a weapon, and I sharpened mine until even silence could bleed. They will tell you I was cruel, that I seduced to destroy, that I sinned to rule. But they will not tell you how Rome taught me this art. How every woman in that empire was either a conquest or a ghost. So I chose conquest. My nights were not of silk, as you imagine, but of secrets. I sat beside marble gods, my face painted in serenity, my heart listening to the lies that built an empire. I knew when generals plotted revolts, when priests whispered heresy, when slaves passed messages beneath amphorae of wine. Every truth passed through my hands like coins. Every secret fed me. Yet, I was still human, cursed with the ache of memory. There was once a boy, not noble, not royal, whose laughter had no agenda. He was the first to call me by my name, not my title. His eyes did not see an empress. They saw a woman. And for that, he was doomed. They found his body in the river Tiber, the night after he confessed his love. The emperor said it was an accident. But the river never lies. That was the night I buried my heart with him, and in its place grew something colder, something far more loyal to Rome. I became what they feared most, a woman who no longer needed to be loved to be obeyed. And yet, ere in the silence of my chambers, I would still hear him. Remember who you were before the crown, he would whisper. But I did not remember. The crown consumes. The crown forgets. One morning, as the dawn bled red over the city, I walked through the Hall of Triumphs, past the marble faces of gods and emperors. I realized something. Each of them believed they had conquered Rome. None of them saw that Rome had conquered them. Even now, as I speak to you across centuries, I feel that same quiet hunger lingering in your world, the same lust for power dressed as virtue, the same obsession with beauty dressed as truth. History calls me a sinner. Perhaps I am. But history was written by those I outlived. They say the night I fell, Rome celebrated. That my name was erased from every tablet, every statue melted down. They thought that would end me. but the marble remembers. The walls whisper when no one listens. And somewhere beneath the dust of centuries, my confession still bleeds through. This is that confession. You will not find redemption here. You will find truth, buried in silk and ash. I was not the fall of Rome. I was its reflection, the mirror it shattered to forget itself. There was a place in Rome that no historian ever dared to name. A garden built not for beauty, but for secrets. Hidden behind a wall of vines and silence, it was where the empire unmasked itself. By daylight, it was said to be my sanctuary, a retreat for the empress, a place of reflection and peace. But by night, it became the heart of Rome's true religion, desire. There were no gods in that garden, only mortals pretending to be divine. The marble statues that lined its parts had seen more truth than the Senate itself. And beneath the silver leaves, oaths were broken, alliances were born, and history shifted in whispers. They thought I built it for pleasure, but I built it for power. Every emperor rules by fear or love. I ruled by curiosity. I discovered that the human soul reveals itself only when it believes it is unseen. So I created a place where Rome could be honest, a theater of masks where senators shed their togas and confessed without words. What they called sin, I called truth. There was no hierarchy in the Garden of Shadows. Only temptation, laid bare under moonlight. I walked through it as both spectator and judge, draped in a gown of silver that caught the fire of every torch. My attendants were sworn to silence, my guards stationed far beyond earshot. Those who entered did so willingly, and those who left never spoke of it again. Do you understand now why they feared me? They called me a harlot, a deceiver, a she-serpent in the heart of Rome. But what I held were not lovers, they were confessions. One senator, trembling with wine, whispered how he plotted against the emperor. Another begged me to spare his son from the arena. A priest confessed that the gods were silent, that he no longer believed in Jupiter's mercy. Each secret was a jewel, hidden within the folds of my memory. And I wore them all. In time, even the emperor grew uneasy. He would send spies to watch the garden gates, though he never dared to enter himself. He feared what he might see, or perhaps what he already knew. He once said to me, "Crying is a fragile thing, my love. It can shatter under the weight of a whisper." I smiled, because I was the whisper. But there were nights, rare, fleeting, when I felt the garden turn against me. The air would thicken, the moon dim behind clouds, and the laughter of Rome's powerful would fade into something hollow. It was as though the marble statues themselves began to watch, judging me with unblinking eyes. Once, while walking among them alone, I heard the soft sound of weeping. Not from the living, but from the stone. And in that moment, I understood, every secret carries a ghost. And I had gathered too many. Still, I continued. For power, once tasted, becomes a kind of hunger that no feast can satisfy. The emperor's affection waned as my influence grew. He surrounded himself with generals and flatterers, men who pretended loyalty but measured his decline. They urged him to tame me, to silence me, to remind Rome who wore the laurel. But he hesitated, because he, too, had entered the garden, though not in body. He had left his sins in my hands long ago. He feared I might speak them aloud. That was the true foundation of our empire, not marble or lore, but mutual blackmail. And when the gods looked away, that truth became the only commandment we obeyed. One evening, I found myself standing before the mirror in my chamber, staring at the reflection of a woman I no longer recognized. My beauty had become armor, my smile a blade. I wondered what remained beneath it all, the girl who once wept beside the Tiber, or just the ghost of her ambition. As I turned away, the candlelight flickered, and for a moment, the mirror showed another face beside mine. Unfamiliar, pale, yet achingly familiar. The boy I had loved. His eyes filled not with anger, but pity. And then, he was gone. I whispered his name into the silence, and the silence whispered it back. That was when I realized, even the dead can haunt the living through memory. Especially when the living no longer remember how to be alive. The next morning, I walked through the garden once more. The vines had grown thicker, the statues darker with age. A raven perched upon the fountain, its feathers glistening like spilled ink. It tilted its head toward me and croaked once, sharply, as if warning me. For the first time, I listened. Because in its cry, I heard the truth. Secrets cannot be caged forever. Even marble cracks. Rome was never quiet. Even in its sleep, it murmured. The city breathed through firelight and footsteps, through prayers whispered to gods that had long stopped listening. And in that restless pulse, I could hear my name. They no longer spoke it with awe. They spoke it with warning. Rumors had begun to slither through the marble halls, quiet at first, then louder, until even the servants dared to lower their eyes when I passed. They said the emperor had grown suspicious. They said the empress had too many friends, too many eyes, too many truths. And they were right. I had built my throne on knowledge, not blood. But in Rome, knowledge was the blood of power, and mine had begun to spill. One night, I found a scroll on my table. No seal. No name. Only a single sentence written in crimson ink. He knows. I stared at it for a long time, listening to the steady hum of the palace torches, the faint laughter of courtiers outside. He knows. Did he know about the garden? The meetings? The secrets that passed through my hands like silk and venom? Or did he know something worse? Something I had tried even to hide from myself? That I no longer loved him. The emperor had been a god to Rome, but to me, he had always been a man. A man of smoke and thunder, strong, fragile, cruel in his kindness. Once, I admired him. Then, I pitied him. And in time, I feared him. Because when a god begins to doubt his worshippers, he becomes a monster. That night, I could not sleep. The marble floors seemed colder, the air heavier. Even the stars looked like eyes, watching from beyond the roof of the world. So I walked. Through corridors lined with tapestries of victories and lies, through the atrium where his statue stood, taller than truth. I found him in the hall of columns, surrounded by the ghosts of Rome's past. He sat alone, his back to me, the laurel crown resting beside his cup. The wine was dark, the silence darker. He did not turn when I entered. "You built something," he said at last. His voice was calm, too calm. Something greater than temples, greater than armies. A web that binds even me. I said nothing. There were no lies left to tell. He turned then, and I saw it, the sorrow of a man who knows the gods have betrayed him. "Did you ever love me?" he asked. The question struck deeper than any dagger could. I wanted to answer. I wanted to reach for the part of me that remembered love, the part buried beneath silk and ambition. But I found nothing. Only silence. And silence was its own confession. He smiled, not with cruelty, but with finality. "Then Rome will love you no more." He rose, and for the first time, I saw fear in him. Not of me, but of what he must now do. That was the curse of every emperor, to destroy what he once worshipped. When he left, the torches flickered, and the marble walls seemed to breathe. I felt something crack inside me, not guilt, Not grief, but inevitability. By dawn, the city trembled with whispers. The Senate was called to session. The guards doubled at the gates. And the women who once adorned my garden now avoided my eyes. That day, I understood that the emperor no longer played by Rome's rules. He had invented his own, and I was the first piece to be sacrificed. The summons came at dusk. A soldier of my household entered, pale, trembling. "My lady," he said, "the emperor commands your presence." I knew what that meant. In Rome, when a ruler asks for your presence at sunset, he means to end your dawn. I dressed slowly, in white, the color of innocence, though I had long abandoned it. As I walked through the palace, I saw faces turn away, hands tremble. The same lips that once praised me now whispered my epitaph. He waited for me in the imperial chamber, alone, without crown, without armor. Only a man facing the ghost he had created. "You taught me," he said softly, "that knowledge is the truest weapon." He stepped closer. But every weapon must be sheathed before it cuts the hand that wields it. He gestured to a small table. A silver cup. A vial beside it. I did not ask what it was. I already knew. He would not execute me. That was too public, too cruel. No, he would let me die as Rome preferred its legends to die, quietly, beautifully, unseen. For a moment, I almost laughed. The garden, the whispers, the masks, they had all led here, to this final performance. I lifted the cup. The liquid shimmered like moonlight. He watched me, his expression unreadable. And I said, Rome will forget you before it forgets me. Then I drank. It burned, not like fire, but like truth. Slow, merciless, inevitable. The world blurred. The walls melted into light. I remember reaching for the edge of the table, my fingers brushing against the laurel crown he had once worn. And then, nothing. But death, I discovered, is not silence. It is memory. I awoke to find myself standing where time no longer moved, in the same garden, but overgrown, empty, swallowed by centuries. The statues were broken. The fountains dry. The vines had consumed everything but the sound of my own voice. I realized then that I had become what I had feared most. A whisper. A story. A lesson carved in the ruins of Rome. And yet, even here, I do not rest. Because history does not bury women like me. It hides us, and waits for us to be rediscovered. I did not die. I dissolved. The poison carried me beyond the reach of touch, beyond breath, beyond the hunger of the living. When the pain ended, I thought I would find silence. But silence has a voice, and it sounds like your own name. They buried me before the dawn, beneath marble too pure for truth. No priest dared to speak my name, no friend dared to weep. The emperor declared it a private matter, a tragedy of the household. Rome believed him. Rome always believed its masters. But the earth did not. For days, the air above my tomb refused to stay still. The flowers withered before blooming. The torches at the mausoleum flickered without wind. And then came the dreams, not mine, but theirs. The emperor dreamed of a garden drowned in blood. The senators dreamed of statues whispering their sins. The people dreamed of a woman standing by the Tiber, her reflection smiling when she did not. That was how I returned. Not in flesh, but in memory. Woven into their fears, breathing through their guilt. I became Rome's secret conscience. You see, when an empire kills its truth, it does not end it, it infects itself with it. and I was the infection that could not be cured. I watched them through centuries of ruin. The palaces crumbled, the temples turned to dust. But in every echo of marble, in every cracked statue, my story lived on. Distorted, disguised, denied, but never forgotten. They turned me into legend. Some said I was a witch. Others, a goddess of lust and vengeance. The poets called me Venus reborn in sin. But none of them knew the truth. I was not divine. I was human. And that was my crime. Rome forgave its tyrants. It worshipped its generals, but it never forgave a woman who learned its language of power. And so, history sharpened its quills against my memory. It rewrote my life into warnings. They told daughters to obey, not to desire. They told wives to serve, not to see. And when the storytellers spoke of me, they smiled with pity, as though I were madness made flesh. But even pity is a kind of remembrance. I whispered through their ink, through the dust of libraries, through the lips of scholars who half believed my name. Each century found me again, in paintings, in tragedies, in forbidden books. And every time, I changed form. Every time, I lived anew. Sometimes I was a queen. Sometimes, a courtesan. Sometimes, a martyr. But always, always, I was the voice that reminded them of what they had buried. I do not haunt to punish. I haunt to remind. You, who listen now, think your world has escaped mine. You think you are free of empires, of crowns, of whispered sins in gilded halls. But tell me, have your rulers changed? Or have they only traded laurel for light? Does your power not still wear a mask? Do your desires not still hide behind virtue? I have watched you, across centuries, building cities of glass and iron upon the bones of your forgotten gods. And I wonder, when you speak of progress, whose silence pays for it? When you build your empires of knowledge, whose truth do you erase? I was the beginning of that question. You are its continuation. And so, I remain. Every time a woman learns the cost of speaking, I breathe again. Every time a secret topples a throne, I open my eyes. Every time love turns to weapon, I remember his face, the boy by the river, the only one who saw me before the crown. Perhaps that is my curse, to remember what even time wishes to forget. They say the soul fades when no one speaks its name. And yet, here you are, saying mine without knowing it. Hearing me in the echo of your own hunger for truth, you may think this is history. But it is prophecy. Rome fell once. It will fall again. And each time it does, my shadow will walk its ruins, whispering the same question into the wind. Who truly rules, the crown, or the secret that breaks it? I have spoken long enough for ghosts. Now I will speak for you. When the marble cracked, when the temples fell, I thought the world would end. But the world never ends. It only forgets how to remember. You live now among ruins that have been rebuilt too many times to recognize themselves. You call them cities. You call them nations. But they are Rome in another mask, still hungry, still trembling, still afraid of truth dressed in beauty. I see your emperors in suits instead of togas, your gods made of glass and fire, your temples lit by blue light instead of torches. You believe you have escaped us, but your echoes still walk the same roads. Every empire is reborn when it learns to disguise its sins as progress. You build towers that kiss the clouds and call them ambition. You silence the weak and call it order. You bury the past and call it peace. You are Rome, polished, digital, infinite, but still Rome. And so I whisper once more, across centuries of stone and silence. Remember what we became when desire ruled without soul, when truth became a decoration, when love became currency. I was born in that age, and it destroyed me. But perhaps it was not Rome that fell. Perhaps it was only the mirror that shattered. And you are still staring into its broken light. Once, I stood before an empire that thought itself eternal. Now, I stand before another. And both have the same eyes, brilliant, blind, and afraid to close. Listen closely. History does not move forward. It circles. It waits. It repeats the names of its mistakes until someone dares to answer. You are that answer. Or you could be. Do not let your truths become as hollow as our gods. Do not let your beauty become your cage. Do not let your secrets build another throne for those who would never bleed for you. I was the whisper that broke an empire. You could be the silence that heals one. But that choice is yours. It always was. I am only the echo that reminds you what forgetting costs. And if, someday, you find yourself walking through ruins, and hear a voice call your name from the wind, do not fear it. It will only be me, the last whisper of Rome, the last truth it ever spoke.
Empires die, but their ghosts never leave.